Welcome to Less Invasive podcast. I'm your host, Lucien Blondel, and I bring 20 years of experience in surgical robotics, in orthopedics, neurosurgery, spine surgery, interventional radiology to the table. Today, for this very first episode, I'm glad to have Jay Pendleton on. Welcome, Jay. How are you?
Great, Lucian. Great to be on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, sure. So we met on LinkedIn about 5 months ago. We started discussing podcast. Actually, I found out you were on another podcast. I listened to the episode, and you started talking about traveling, and that's where
Yes.
we connected. And I reached out to you, and we started discussing, and then I joined your own podcast, and that's has been a friendly relationship so far. So I'm very
Yes.
happy to have you on. So Jay, the first part, I want to maybe listen a little bit more about your story.
hmm
We've been discussing in the past couple of months on what you are currently doing and your transition, and we'll maybe talk about that later. Uh, can you briefly outline what has been your journey in the medtech space, and especially in the spine industry?
Yeah, sure. No, and I appreciate it's excited to be on. Congrats on launching up a podcast in a different language. Like that's incredible. Just
Yeah,
for what it's worth. I mean, so kudos to you. So I've always kind of been in sales, sales guy, from college and was in B2B sales at IBM and did some things, but I wasn't passionate about that. I didn't have the love for the role or the space, and so traveling was kind of my option. I was 25 years old, and that's again the gap year that you and I both know was what I did. And then shortly after that, I like to say that medical device sales found me because it was random, and I learned about it through my girlfriend at the time. Now she's my wife of 12 years, and it's been a wonderful career. Right, it's essentially almost coming up on 14 years in the spine and navigation robotic space for some large companies. And it's been exciting. Learned a lot. I'm still learning every single day. And I love it. I love the interaction between the industry and surgeons. I love the technology that's seemingly changing year over year over year. And so it's super exciting and ultimately a very fulfilling career because at the end of the day, we're part of a team that's helping patients get their lives back, and what a great cause and something to be proud of.
sure.
So
I mean, it's all about the cause. I mean, all the people working in this industry have, I guess, the patient benefit in mind, and that's what fuels us with the energy to go through all the hard challenges, difficult challenges that we face on a daily basis on the engineering side, but also on the sales side. So,
for sure.
you've been working at Medtronic, Invasive, so all in the
hmm
spine industry. Is there a choice to stay in the spine? You could have moved to another space at Medtronic, or go to a different area. Why did you stay in the spine sector?
Yeah, it's a great question. I feel like I've grown up here, and I feel like I have a lot of tribal knowledge or domain knowledge or whatever the term is for this specific niche or this specific focus, from the grasp of the anatomy to uh, understanding at a very to an nth degree what the surgeons are trying to accomplish, and then that allows me, I feel, the ability to provide value. And while I feel that these skills and these the awareness, the situational awareness, the emotional intelligence, right, all these things that we've developed over the years, people that have been doing this a long time in med tech, they are absolutely transferable. And that was something that I looked at other industries. At least at this stage now, I'm 41 years old. Like I feel like I still got a lot of running and runway to do, a lot of meat left on the bone, and specifically for spine, as you know, there's a lot of innovation that's still happening.
Mhm.
Robotics is in its infancy in terms of the maturity. uh, relative to the spine market. There's other things that are happening, right? Imaging, optics. There's things that I see, data, machine learning, right? Analytics that are starting to come in and are going to, if they haven't already, really change the way in which things are done. And so it's not time to leave yet. So can't get rid of me that easily.
Okay, cool. So I understand that really have a deep knowledge of the indication on the environment, the user profiles, helps you to better do sales. What piece of advice for people maybe in medical sales, starting medical sales, would you give? Because you've won like a couple of awards, President's Club, Champions Clubs, whatever clubs it is,
Yeah, all the
for having
clubs.
hit the
Yeah.
quota. What one piece of advice would you give to people starting in medical sales?
Yeah, it's a good question. I get it a lot. I think, and I don't want to be repetitive, but if it's the same answer, it's you got to be yourself. So I'm very authentic. Kind of what you see is what you get. Sometimes it's too much. Sometimes people get tired of me. I don't really know. I don't really know another way to be. This is how God made me, right? So just be yourself. It's pretty simple, um, but I think some of the things that are simple are not easy. It's difficult. You can get pulled in so many different directions, and so be yourself. Have integrity, right? High character. Those are things that are going to kind of carry you through the tough times. And you mentioned all the clubs and the quotas and all that stuff is awesome, but that's all a byproduct. So learn to add value in any way that you can. So apologies for my dogs here. Learn to add value to the room, to the surgeons, to the hospital. Right, it's an ecosystem. Right, some of these things I've talked about on videos or LinkedIn, and it's really important to know that you're a cog on the wheel and that you can help in many different ways. And so, always be a student of the game, learn every day of how you can continually add value. Because if you're not adding value, what are you doing
Mm.
in the room or attached to that spoke or to that wheel? I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yeah, yeah, sure. So I heard two things. First one is be yourself, and the second one is add value. And I resonate with that very much because that's what I'm trying to do right now. To bring value to the listeners, and I try to be myself on the social media, and maybe we'll
mhm,
talk about that later because I think in the end, sales is one people buying from one another people, and
that's
business
right.
relationships is also between two people at the end of the day. Even if it's companies, it's all about relationships. So
That's right.
adding value and being yourself helps creating relationships in this regard. So
Yeah, and one more thing to clarify: adding value, be yourself, but don't get so caught up in your successes or where you are. I think in this goes for, this is advice I give to my kids. This is just kind of transfers across whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. It's all it. And as I've gotten older, Lucian, maybe there's a little bit of been some things that I've learned and some wisdom. It's all about your outlook, your mindset, your habits, right? Those are the things that if you do those consistently, success will come, right? The wins, the accolades on the wall, the quota busting, the chairman's club and going on these trips. That's awesome. It's not why you do it. It's a byproduct of doing things the right way every single day. So you wake up, and this is something that again I'm going to repeat every single day. You wake up with an opportunity to improve yourself, those around you, right? Your job, your career, your customers. And you have to, at least I have had to look at that most recently as what are you doing to improve yourself, what are you doing to grow your business. And um, that's really something that I think, it's if it starts early, then that's the mindset that people can begin to grow their career, then good things will happen.
yeah, and maybe I will add also that it's never too late to
Mm,
start. Getting into this mindset and to be consistent and yeah, trying to improve yourself, trying to improve anything for your company or for your environment, and it's never too late to start. So when you
never.
look at people being successful They started one day, and maybe that day was not so far away than you might think. Though, talking about value, we'll move on to where you are right now. So you are a VP of Sales at Vizion,
Yes.
which is a startup commercializing the MaxView product.
Hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about the company, where it comes from, the product, what are the unmet
Sure.
needs it tries to solve?
Yeah, so Vizion is a startup based out of Irvine, California, and it's it's been something that I wasn't fully aware. I was not fully aware of what they actually even did until we started talking about a position, right? For me, it was unknown, but I had seen some things online or some surgeons that were using the product, and so I kind of had somewhat of an awareness, but after meeting the leadership team who are fantastic, meeting some of these surgeons that have worked on this and that are using this on a daily basis, it's really just honestly, minimally invasive surgery, right? And you've talked about this, and even kind of in the open to your podcast, it gets tossed around a lot. But for spine, minimally invasive spine surgery is it's a great option, but it's it's a great option because it's better for the patient, not always better for the surgeon.
Mhm.
And I've talked to many surgeons about this. It's great for them to treat their patients in these less invasive ways, but there's challenges that come with that: learning curves, um, ergonomics, visualization, right? These are the things that Vizion addresses. And, we actually track kind of all uh, our hypotheses is that we have high value during minimally invasive spine surgery. And so from ergonomics, right? And you're looking, if you imagine surgeons using these small dilators and tubes to do their procedures, they have to kind of angle their neck in a certain way that's could be could cause fatigue after the end of a week doing that multiple times a day. It's still really a good operation and a great option for their surgeon population. It's marketable. It's what surgeons want. They want less invasive, but it's sometimes difficult. And so that's what Vizion looks to do. It provides the optics, which is the missing piece. I've stood in these ORs for over a dozen years. It's a missing piece to what the surgeon's seeing is not always displayed in the room. And so why is
So
that important?
yeah,
Go
so
ahead.
how does it work right now? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm a spine surgeon. I don't know anything about vision, so I'm just
yeah,
doing
sure.
it conventional way. What kind of procedure I'm doing and how I'm doing it? How do I see? Is it
Yeah,
like naked eye or microscopes or loops, and what kind
that's
of
it.
instruments do I put inside?
Those are the three options, right? Naked eye, loops, or microscope, right? To see down the corridor of whatever you're doing to get access to the spine, right? Access is very important, right? I was with a company that pioneered lateral access, and both of the large companies that I've been with have unique ways to get to the spine in different approaches, right? Either posterior, anterior, or lateral oblique. So what Vizion offers is another option, which is essentially providing high definition optics down the tube that are already being used today. So the workflow stays the same, the instruments stay the same. What the surgeon gets and what everyone in the room gets is a picture of real time, high definition, what's happening below the surgeon's hands. And so the distal working ends of the instrument are in view for everyone to see. That's MaxView. That's what MaxView provides.
Okay.
And it attaches to existing retractors. It's agnostic to the company. So whatever company you use, whatever rep you want in that room, can have Vizion as an extension and really as a differentiator to that surgeon's procedure. Um, so for teaching institutions, I mean, I've watched these residents and fellows learning as the attending physicians doing the procedure, and conversely, vice versa, the attending physician can watch and observe their student doing the procedure and knowing that the patient that they're liable for, they can watch every single step and they don't have to fight for looking down this small retractor. Again, I've been here for quite some time. I started in 2008, and minimally invasive spine surgery is still a thing, but it's Lucian. It's, I would say, I don't know, the latest data maybe shows a little bit over 20% of the market. Traditionally, spine surgery, traditional approaches to spine surgery still remain the dominant way.
Mm-mm.
So why is that? Our contention, our theory is that it's because it's difficult, it's
Yeah.
challenging, it's difficult to see.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that in many other specialties. I mean, MIS, like maybe 10 years ago, everybody was predicting, that the two curves between conventional and
mhm,
MIS would cross at some point. But
right.
if we're still at 20%, then those predictions were not really true. And in each specialty, there is a barrier, which is always comes down to visualization, getting information on where I am, uh, being able to go where I want to go, where I plan my instrument or my
Hmm.
implant to be. So yeah, they all face the same similar issues, similar challenges in various specialties. And
That's right.
I mean that's good. So this system is the hardware and software. How much is it beyond the optics? When you
It
want to do a recording, you just plug to another system, and then you get
Yes.
your video feed.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but yeah, there's options for side by side split screen with the navigation or robotics. There's options for video recording. We currently we're just plugging into existing monitors in the OR, right? That might be something we do later. We look at different ways to bring the optics to the room, but yeah, I mean, it's designed to be plug and play right now. I think where this could go, it largely depends on kind of how, again, we market and where the model goes from here.
Okay, cool. So where is the company right now? We are starting 2022. Is it like the beginning of the commercialization? What are you looking at? Only US or US and
Yeah,
European markets, or
Yeah, unfortunately, I
what's
get a
the plan?
ton of these inbound questions from. Again, you mentioned LinkedIn. It's where we met. It's kind of our playground, right? It's just it's not for play, but it's for real. It's where we're growing, and I get a ton of inbound from. I've had Middle East, Latin America, right? All these Europe, and Pedro Bergiano uses this in Italy, but I would say right now that our focus is growth and adoption in the U.S. We've recently tripled our sales force, right? I was a part of that growth at the end of 2021. And as we're kind of early into 2022, we're looking at, how can we make the biggest impact? How can we grow with these spine surgeons who we feel like some of them don't know who we are, some of them do, but they're not sure, on the kind of the cost or the value, and that's our job as a leadership team to grow this thing and really kind of see where we can go with it. And, hopefully we go OUS as well soon.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, don't forget outside your US markets, please.
I will not. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so moving on to the next part of this episode, I wanted to maybe exchange thoughts about transitioning from corporate environment to a startup world. So you haven't been in a startup before you joined Vision. How was it like, joining this kind of fast-paced environment? What did you learn? Where did you struggle? And yeah, what was this short couple of months journey in the startup world?
It's a great question, but before I wanted to give some context. When you're asking that and you said you've never been at a startup before, actually, I was an intern in college for this company that was a kind of this incubator startup, and it was like out of this the CEO's house, and so I got a little glimpse, not med tech, and it was ages ago, but I got a little glimpse of the world, of the startup world, and so I haven't really actually put those two together until you mentioned that. It was one of my first internships in college, and so, but yes, in med tech, I've largely worked for these big institutions, big strategic companies, and I'd say Invasive. I started pretty early there, so got to be part of a large growth period there, but yeah, this is unlike anything that I've ever been a part of, and um, it's definitely been a really cool experience, a lot of new challenges, a lot of things that I'm learning. I mean, every single day, and I think ultimately that's fulfilling for me because I know it's not just gonna be roses and all easy. It's going to challenge me. It's going to require me to get uncomfortable, which is where growth happens. And so it feeds that. I think it quenches that part of my spirit, which is exciting. It's also, Lucian, allowing me to utilize some of these God-given abilities, some of these skills that I've been honing and developing that you and I've talked about offline, and a little bit on your podcast on Sultans of Sales. We talked about the LinkedIn, the magic of the digital strategy of communicating like this, that's scalable, that can go, instead of one to one. You mentioned the sales process is absolutely one to one, but when we spread the awareness and when we talk about what we're working on, like, these are some things that I've been very passionate about, and now I'm starting to see the fruits of those labors, which is super exciting. So I'm grateful for that.
So what would you say was triggering your move from corporate to a startup, and for someone who might be listening and who would be wondering if the startup world is the right move in 2022, what what was your
Yeah,
experience, and what would you recommend?
yeah, no, it's. I think everybody is different, and every situation is different, right? I mean, there's been big companies have tons of awesome advantages, right?
Yep.
But sometimes, I think in our path in our career, we have to think about, like, what do we want to do? What are we good at doing, right? What would we do for fun? What would we do for free? And figure out kind of where all that fits, and then find a way to make money, doing the things that we love to do and that we enjoy doing. So, for me, it was kind of, I don't know, I would say a time in my career where it made sense to look at different options. I mean, there were some things done from a restructuring standpoint. Some things were looking to see what was next for me in my career. Again, wanting to grow, so I wanted to make sure that, like, whatever I chose, that I was going to grow from it, and that I could provide outsized impact and value to that organization. Like, it's important to be valued, at least for me, by my company. And so those were the things that I feel like, when 2 months in, but I feel like I'm getting with Vizion, and it's exciting. And to your question about advice for people, if this is when they should move to a startup, I mean, again, if you're fulfilled in work, and I'm a big believer that the grass is greener where you water it, not necessarily on the other side. And so, if you're doing everything that you can in your power to do a good job and to be um, make an impact, then double down on that. Like, I would say, trust in yourself and know that there's opportunity that's out there. It's just a matter of kind of what you do with your skills and your abilities.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can relate with what you said about finding the place where you can grow the most and bring value from your skill set. So I've been transitioning from startup. I've worked like maybe 15 years in a startup environment before going to corporate, and that was
Hmm.
a big change, a really
Yeah.
big change. But I think retrospectively, I would say I needed it to really grow in learning how to do business at scale, how to do manufacturing, servicing, marketing, sales in a very well structured environment. Because when you're
Hmm.
in a startup, especially a very small startup of 10 people, you don't have all this, skill sets and learning opportunities. So I think that's some explanation of me transitioning from a medtech startup to a big strategic like GE Healthcare,
Hmm.
and then I moved back from corporate to startup, and I think again that was pretty much the same as you say. um, I, I spent 3 amazing years at GE Healthcare. I love the company. I love the people. They're doing a great product. I'm still, it's still somehow a bit of my product.
Yeah.
I still following that product, and I was at RSNA, the big radiology show last December, and first thing I wanted to do is to go to the GE booth and see this product and the new evolution and talk to people and what they've done and what's new on this product. So I'm very
That's
much
awesome.
attached to this company and to the product, but after 3 years, I just felt I learned as much as I could in this environment, and the pace was slowing down for me in the position I was, and with the opportunities I had at the time, and so there was another opportunity to go back to the startup world and to learn again. We
Hmm.
were about to start a clinical trial, so that was something I didn't work on. I've never led a clinical trial before I joined Biotech in 2013. So that's what I did, and I came back, and I grew,
That's awesome.
I learned, and I brought also I think value, because when you work 3 years in a well structured environment, you are capable to help a startup company figure out how to organize the processes, how to get
Hmm.
better. Um, at what you have to do, and obviously you have to adjust what you learn, because if you plug and play a big strategic organization onto
Right.
a small startup, you just kill the startup. So you have to scale down a little bit what you have in mind, and just adjust and grow a long time. So yeah, I mean, I relate to what you said about grow yourself and
Right.
bring add value to the next environment that you want to join. Okay, so
Absolutely, man.
yeah, you mentioned the LinkedIn stuff. That's the
Let's go. Yeah.
yeah social media. So
That's amazing.
what? Yeah, we've been pretty much on this social media journey at the same time, I would say. I mean, I've been following you since we started I was a guest on your podcast, and
Hmm.
I can see that we have similar experiences, and I just see that it's evolving very fast, as you said, and companies are trying to adjust their
Hmm.
strategies to this kind of new ways to communicating uh, between industry peers and between industry and physicians, and because it can obviously bring a lot of awareness, attention,
Yep.
and then a lot of some business. So what would you say? I don't know, what retrospectively, what has been your journey on LinkedIn for someone who did not start to engage into this kind of social
Yeah.
media activity, and then the next question will be around what's next.
Well, I wish I could say that I set out in February of 21 to become a LinkedIn influencer or a creator, but I did not at all. It came out of an awareness, just looking introspectively, looking in the mirror, and I felt like with all the market dynamics and the shifting landscape around us, um, you know, I don't know if it was COVID. I think COVID certainly, shined a light on some things, but needing to show up differently for me is where this thing born out or started or originated. It also I've talked about this before. I was getting a ton of inbound requests from people wanting to break into medical sales, and I want to help people. I think I'm called to serve, and I just don't have the time bandwidth uh, to help all of them. And so this LinkedIn, specifically video content, was a way that I can reach people at scale. So that's kind of what it started out as, and then it's evolved almost every month, every quarter. There's a new focus or a shift of um, possibilities that this thing could where it could go. I feel like it's certainly constantly evolving. Right, I've made some fantastic connections. Right, you and I speak often. Whether I'm getting my barbecue ready, and because with the France Texas time change, it doesn't always line up. But we connect, we talk, we challenge one another. And you're a good friend of mine, and that's amazing. We've never met in person. I think we missed each other in Chicago by like 2 weeks, which is
Yeah,
frustrating. But but so there it is. There's a connection. There's someone who's in your corner and in your network now that otherwise you wouldn't have. I think about kind of some of the things that the podcast has led to, some of these discussions that uh, I've always loved having these great, captivating conversations. I think that if you boil down like LinkedIn or whatever it is, like it's a conversation. And what starts the conversation can be written form, it can be a picture, it can be a video, but it's a conversation that people can all contribute to, and it's it's quite beautiful, honestly. Um,
And like
so
any
what I yeah,
yeah,
go ahead. Sir.
yeah, I would say like any conversation, you have to put a bit of yourself into the content if you want to really start a conversation. I think
That's it.
yeah, we discussed last time. I was on LinkedIn for several years before it really started for me. But it's just when I decided in April last year to really use leverage this medium to share at scale. So that's
That's it.
you, at scale is really the first point, and the more so it went well. I get a new followers and content was okay, but I think retrospectively it's when I started to put a little bit more of myself in the content that I started to get connection. I mean, but
Hmm.
true connection, not someone who wants to just connect with you to sell you something or
Right.
to ask for a job or whatever. And
Right.
and like when we did the podcast, it was we recorded in August, Sultans of Sales.
Yeah.
I we just did this 1 hour conversation that was unprepared, unedited, and you just
Yeah.
we talked about we could do split this in 3 episodes, and you just push the content on YouTube as it was.
That's
And
right.
1 hour after, someone texted me. I just started to listen to this episode. I thought I was just going to, stop 15 minutes ago, but I listened to the full hour. That's
Wow.
awesome. I want to connect with you. I want to discuss, and that's another individual which I get to have a true connection
That's it.
through LinkedIn. So yeah,
You,
connect and not scale. I mean that's the two things I can highlight.
but you mentioned leverage, right? And it's not an intentional thing. It's not like we're coming out here to create, but that's a big point. So think about historically, right? I was a sales rep for these companies, and my customers and the marketplace absolutely knew who I was. I provided value, at least I hope and feel that I provided value to them when I was in that room, and when I was serving those customers and the nurses and the scrub techs that we all worked with and the patients, right? Ultimately, but it's such a closed loop. It's such a kind of like just those people knew who I was and knew what I could bring to the table. And that's a bit of a liability, right? Because job losses happen, like pandemics happen, right? These things that we really can't control are always going to happen. You can't control a lot. And so what you can control is, again, back to what I referenced earlier, how you prepare, how you show up, and also like how you're presenting like the information. And in this day and age, like this is a very marketable ability to create subject matter expertise, right? Joe Mullings and I talk about this, like a lot of folks reference this, but you've had a very accomplished career, Lucian, right? And I would say in a different light, so have I. And it's not braggadocious, it's not self promotional. We're just proud of our work, and it's fun and exciting to be able to showcase what you're working on. Sometimes as you're working on it, right? And that provides a different leverage point, a different entry point into the discussion with your customer and with the market. And as you and I talked about when we were prepping for this, I had 6 inbound leads over the weekend from surgeons reaching out to me directly about our products based on a 50-second video that I put out there. Now, is that valuable? Is there revenue yet? It's valuable, and the
Yeah,
revenue will follow, right? It's like
yeah.
this is
Revenue will follow. I mean,
2022.
yeah, that's the that. I mean, it's a long game because there is a at least for my part, there is a lot to learn into how you write a copy, um, how you create content on which kind of topic and what kind of which niche you want to choose and how you provide this information. So
Hmm.
it takes time. I mean, it's not because you start to post on LinkedIn or Twitter that you will get something right after that. It takes time to learn, but once you learn the basics, I would say, of copywriting and telling your story, basically, you do this
That's it.
on a video, then it creates awareness, and then it starts to roll and to get you get the fruits of what you've done. And I mean, on my side also, I've been contacted by many people for many reasons. I'm not selling anything, so uh, but
Well, you're
I'm
selling yourself
yeah, I'm
as an
selling
engineer, as an expert.
yeah, so yeah, I'm getting a lot of opportunities, not not job opportunities only, but opportunities to do business with people, to connect
Right.
with people, to learn from people, to teach to people. So
Hmm.
it's yeah, I mean, it's been great. So what's I mean, you've been on LinkedIn, you've been doing exploring maybe Twitter, a different kind of
Yeah.
form. Where are you going to focus or widen your
Yeah, maybe.
channels? What's your
I don't know.
business plan?
Literally this morning, I had two people ask if I could please put my podcast, uh, "The Sultans of Sales," on audio on Spotify and Apple. And you've been one of those from the get go. I see you
Yeah,
smiling.
I'm still
Uh,
waiting for this.
I know, and it was supposed to be one of those things. It's just it's bandwidth and priorities. It's for me, as you mentioned, I don't edit. I just kind of get the capture the conversation, and upload it to YouTube. I think it's important to have, just like on a Zoom call, I try to flip my video on unless I'm driving or eating or doing something else, because of the engagement factor, and it's really important. Not that the conversation could not exist without the video feed, but it's just something that at this stage I haven't dedicated time to because of being pulled in so many different directions. But I think that needs to be something that I prioritize as for me and for the awareness in the channel. It's just getting it on multiple different platforms so that people can drive and listen. They can jog or walk the dogs and listen, because that's what I do when I walk my dogs, or when I drive. I'll throw on a podcast, and so I get it. I get the behavior piece, and we may be missing quite a bit of opportunity to reach people. Um, but but yeah, in terms of the mediums, uh, they're all different. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, like I've kind of found that if I just focus and have the laser focus on one, and really just consistently bring it here, that good things will happen. It's not to say that the others don't have value. I got to pick and choose. And well, I think there's quite a bit of surgeons on Twitter, and some that I'm connected with there, and some that I'm connected with on Instagram. I do feel that the majority of the market, at least for me, sits on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn isn't a place for you to just find a job. It's a networking machine, and connections can happen. And as you said, they're not always about your next opportunity, but sometimes it's just about advancing and improving, and you know aligning with others.
Cool. So, hey, we've covered all the question I had. So maybe there is some room for you to ask me some question if you want to. So, what
Yeah.
would you want to ask to me?
Yeah, Lucian. I mean, you're a busy guy, and you got a lot of things going on. What about, like, why did you decide to start a podcast in 2022? And I'm glad you did. I think it's going to be exceptional for the market. But why did you decide to do this?
Yeah, I mean, it was very obvious to me. I mean, it came obvious to me after a couple of weeks. I started listening to podcasts, and I got so much value out of this. As you explained, there are some times during the day that you can use to listen to something instead of scrolling on a social media like LinkedIn. And I started to listening to podcast. I got value from
Hmm.
it, and I reach out to people. They invited me. I was a guest. I enjoyed it. I found value, and so I was convinced that my journey on sharing knowledge around robotics and assistive technologies would have three steps. First one was copy. I mean, the text, the post, the slide decks, and whatever I do on LinkedIn.
I love
Second,
those, by the way.
the second one was audio, and that was for me the podcast. I've tried to um, I've tried Clubhouse. I never, for some reason, get into this platform, and then the third step would be video. So I mean,
Hmm.
this has been very clear for me for quite some time, and
That's great.
when I know when we did the podcast, I think the idea started to grow that rather being a guest, I could be a host and drive my own content and
Hmm.
trying to reach to people I want to connect with. I want to shine a light because at the end is
Yeah.
I don't sell anything, so I shine light on companies and technologies and physicians and there are a lot of things that I find exciting, and I find they deserve
Yes.
to be to have a voice. So if I
That's
can be
awesome.
a voice for someone, for a technology, for a company, uh, because they struggle with being heard, right, or being found, and so that's something I can do, and I would be happy to do so. So
That's great, man.
yeah, I'm on the second step of my journey, and the next one will be the video. But as this podcast is, also video recorded,
Oh yeah.
somehow I would have completed the three steps.
There you go, man. You knocked out two birds with one stone. I love it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
it's awesome. Well, I can't. I'm excited for what you can bring because you do such a great job from with your skill set and your knowledge, bringing kind of the insights into kind of what's happening with the technology and I think from an engineering perspective or just from a like you've been involved in the commercialization and launches and different things in your career, and so just as I have been part of different things in my career, it's awesome to be able to tell that story and as you said, shine the light on others.
Yeah, and to come back to what you said, it's also explaining where you go, where you are, and what you are going through. It's not just I started
Right.
in 2017, and then were CE mark. We did the first sale, and we had success in some milestones. It's for me. It's also there is value in explaining which steps you go through, what kind
Hmm.
of challenges you face, and what's difficult, what's your everyday life, and how you cope with that. Because in the end, that's what people can relate to. Because a big success or just starting something, taking a leap, and
That's right.
I mean, it's inspiring, but not everybody can directly relate to that if they are not ready for. So,
That's right.
sharing also the process. I mean, sharing the process is also what I try to do. It's not easy because you have to balance between what you have the right to say and what you want to say. So,
That's a delicate dance, right? It is a
yeah,
balance, and but I think it's ultimately serves others, and we're called to do that, right? I think we're both in that same realm.
hey, thank you very much for asking the last question. And I think we are close to 45 minutes. We'll wrap up this episode. Thank you very much, Jay. It was a great pleasure for me to have you on this first episode. I felt like a bit at home for this
Nice.
a bit anxious first recording of the Less Invasive podcast. So thank you very much
Thank you.
for having said yes. And just hang on a minute, we'll discuss offline. And that's it. That was the first episode of Less Invasive podcast. And thanks for listening. Thank you, Jay. And
You bet.
till
Thank
next
you.
time. Bye bye.